Holodrum has 4 seasons: spring, summer, fall, and winter. The world changes with the seasons. In spring, blast blooms can send you high in the air. Summer reveals creek beds and lake bottoms. In fall, leaves open new paths and mushrooms are ready to be picked. In winter, snow blocks trails and lakes freeze. This is Legendary Adventures, a Legend of Zelda playthrough podcast. We've saved both the lands of Labrynna and Holodrum and defeated Twinrova and Ganon. Now it's time to look at the world of Oracle of Seasons. Oracle of Seasons continues the return to the top-down, 2D Zelda world design seen in its sister game, Oracle of Ages. This is only natural considering that the games were designed for the Game Boy Color. The world of Oracle of Seasons is often compared to the world of the original game, seemingly because of one lone feature that is indeed a nod to the original, the island containing the entrance to the first dungeon. In reality, the world of Oracle of Seasons is much closer in design to Link's Awakening. As with Link's Awakening and Oracle of Ages, Holodrum is laid out on a 14x14 grid of squares comprising 196 screens. Comparing Oracle of Seasons and Link's Awakening, we can see that both feature mountainous areas to the north, with the ultimate goal nestled among these mountains. The mountains feature 2 dungeons, and one of those dungeons is a tower. In Link's Awakening, Canalet Castle is located near the center of the map. In Oracle of Ages, Great Moblin's Keep occupies a similar position. Both contain swamp areas on the northwest. Both contain a desert on the southeast. There's a watery area between the desert and the mountains in both games, and 2 major settlements in each game. That said, it is still an original world that stands apart from others in the series. In Link's Awakening, the end goal, the Windfish's Egg, is more or less centered within the mountain range. In Oracle of Seasons, it's been shifted to the west. The size of the desert between Oracle of Seasons and Link's Awakening is significantly different. The desert in Oracle of Seasons is larger. In Link's Awakening, Animal Village sat just west of the desert. But with the larger desert design, the developers seem to have pushed that settlement north into the watery region, resulting in Sunken City. The swamp area in Oracle of Seasons is also much larger, and players can move more freely through it. Horon Village sits further east than Mabe Village and is more centered on the southern section of the map. There are 2 distinct coastline areas in Oracle of Seasons compared to one in Link's Awakening. And there is 1 additional village in the form of the Goron settlement. The location of the game's graveyards and wood areas are different, along with the ruins. Not to mention Oracle of Seasons adds a second map in the form of the underground Subrosia. There may be similarities between the 2, but they do not feel the same. The world above ground is further divided into 15 regions where the seasons change. Most of these regions have a default season, but there is 1 area where the season changes at random. Let's walk through the map. We begin in the south central area of the map where we find Horon Village. This is the main hub of the game. Horon spans roughly 17 screens. It features 7 buildings, 3 are shops, a general store, Vasu Jewelers, and a clock shop. 3 are homes. They include Mayor Rule's home, Blossom and Bippin's home, and Mr. Wright's home. The 7th building is the Know-It-All Bird's house. A fountain sits in the center of Horon. A cave to the south holds a portal to Subrosia. The central gameplay gimmick of Oracle of Seasons is of course the changing seasons. We experience all 4 seasons within Horon Village at random. And in some cases, the village is designed to show off the unique aspects of the seasons. Winter brings about the most significant changes to the village. Snow piles high, we can walk across a snowbank near the north gate. A large snowbank north of Vasu Jewelers restricts movement, forcing us to take a path around the jewelers to reach the Maku tree. Piles of snow that we can dig through are located in a few locations, most prominently next to the shop. And the pool of water next to Mr. Wright's home freezes, allowing us to walk on it. In spring, a child near the north gate endlessly uses a blast bloom to shoot himself into the air. We can try it out too. Other changes are purely cosmetic. There are pink flowers that we can cut through in some locations, and brighter colors all around. Summer is a purely cosmetic change to the village. We get the deeper greens of summer, but there aren't any summer-specific mechanics such as creeping vines or drying water that appear within the village. In fall, we can find mushrooms to pick in southeastern Horon. This allows us access to a treasure chest. All other changes are cosmetic relating to the colors and unique bugs that fly around during the fall. The Maku tree sits in the upper right corner of Horon Village behind a gate. He occupies his own separate seasonal region of the game. It is always summer in the Maku tree's domain. The changing seasons have no impact on the Maku tree. We see the Maku tree grow throughout the game as we collect the essences. He is physically smaller at first. After collecting 2 essences, he grows into a larger tree with a door on the right side. Through the door we find Furore, the Oracle of Secrets. We can also venture further up the Maku tree. The upper area grows and expands as we progress throughout the game. Next, let's visit the coast to the west of Horon. This area defaults to winter with each visit. The coast is subdivided into 2 areas. We can only reach the far western parts of the coast after getting the pirates to dock their ship there. The east side of the coast contains the Hero's Cave. In an unlinked game, it's a small mini-dungeon where players get the sword. In a linked game, it's a larger mini-dungeon that can be tackled in stages throughout the game. Players are awarded with a level 3 power ring for completing it. The graveyard sits above the coast on the west. There are 3 other seasonal regions found just to the east of Horon. The area immediately east of the village is known as the Eastern Suburbs. This area defaults to the fall season. The windmill is found here. To the northeast of the suburbs are the Woods of Winter. There is a seasonal shift in the woods near the Snake's Remains dungeon. This area always defaults to summer. It's home to Holly, the girl on the lookout for Santa. To the south of the suburbs we find the Eastern Shore and the Samasa Desert. This area defaults to summer and cannot be changed. To the north of Horon we find a region known as North Horon. Solid naming there. This area defaults to winter. It is home to Malin and Talon, Lano's Gym, the Gnarled Root Dungeon, Eyeglass Lake, and Unicorn's Cave. To the west of North Horon we find the Holodrum Plain. This region defaults to spring. In this region we also find Ricky's Pen and Mrs. Rule's Villa. To the west of the plain we find Spool Swamp. This region defaults to fall. It features the Floodkeeper's house and Poison Moth's lair. In an unlinked game we receive our permanent animal buddy within Spool Swamp. Which buddy we get depends on how we obtain one of 3 flutes. According to a guide from Nintendo Power, 1 flute is found in the shop in Horon Village just before Spool Swamp. 1 is obtained as a prize in the Subrosian Dance Hall, and the 3rd is given by Ricky if neither of the other 2 flutes are obtained. Because I picked Dimitri as my buddy in Oracle of Ages, I was reunited with him within the swamp. To the north of Spool Swamp lies the entrance to Tarm Ruins and the Lost Woods. This region defaults to fall. We can only access the area after finding 4 special-shaped jewels. The locations of 2 of these jewels change during a linked game, and 1 can only be obtained after getting all 4 seasonal spirits. We find a sword upgrade in the Lost Woods and we can access the ruins proper. The ruins themselves are a separate seasonal zone. They default to spring. We find the Ancient Ruins dungeon here. It's a tower located atop the mountain, much like Eagle's Tower in Link's Awakening. It is, however, located on the opposite side of the map to Eagle's Tower. To the east of the ruins we find Onyx's Castle. This region defaults to winter. The season cannot be changed. It is the end goal of the game. We cannot access Onyx's Castle itself until we've obtained all 8 essences. It is very much like the Windfish's Egg in that it's located on the northern edge of the map, it's inaccessible until the very end, and it presents not a full dungeon, but a puzzle challenge leading up to the final boss. To the east of Onyx's Castle there are the Temple Remains. This region also defaults to winter. We traverse this area to reach the Sword and Shield Maze dungeon. To the east of the Temple Remains is the Goron Mountain. This region also defaults to winter, but it cannot be changed. It's home to the Goron Settlement and features the giant Big Goron. To the east of the Goron Mountain is Mount Cuckoo. This region is home to the Dancing Dragon dungeon. It defaults to summer. To the south of Mount Cuckoo is the Sunken City. And to the east of Sunken City is Great Maudlin's Keep. It defaults to spring. Finally, east of Great Maudlin's Keep is the Natsu River. a river full of rapids which can only be navigated with the help of Dimitri. Or at least that's how it was in my game. This is a region not unlike the Noon Highlands in Oracle of Ages. It will be different for each player depending on their chosen animal buddy. According to the wiki on zeldadungeon.net, if Ricky is selected, it will be called the Natsu Prairie. It will feature cliffs, bushes, and holes to navigate through with Ricky's help. If Moosh is selected, it will be known as the Natsu Wasteland, and it will be pockmarked with holes. The Natsu regions all default to spring. The surface world isn't where the game ends, however. There is a second, subterranean map which players will also explore. Subrosia is laid out on an 8x11 grid of squares for an additional 88 screens to explore. The seasons do not impact Subrosia. All regions are set in place, making it a smaller but more traditional map in the vein of Zelda 2 or Link's Awakening. We open Subrosia piece by piece as we travel through the world and acquire more items. Players will travel between Subrosia and the surface of Holodrum by using portals. There are 7 portals in all. Because Subrosia is a smaller world than Holodrum, the portal locations on the surface do not necessarily correlate with their locations below the surface. Players will first enter Subrosia on the northern side near the Subrosian volcanoes. 3 large volcanoes sit atop the map. The Temple of Seasons sits to the east of the volcanoes. The Subrosian Village takes up most of the central region of the map. The village itself requires that players obtain certain items, such as Rock's Cape, in order to jump over rivers of lava to explore fully. Southeastern Subrosia holds the furnaces and lava lake where we find the bomb flower and later a Subrosian who gives a secret. Just west of Lava Lake is the Subrosian seaside, a beach area where we find star-shaped ore and meet up with Rosa for dates. The beach is separated into distinct areas, a wide open beach and a more secluded beach which recalls the area where we found Marin in Link's Awakening. West of the beach we find the graveyard home to the pirates, and further west still we find the Treasure Grove where we dug up Rock's Feather after it was stolen from us by a pair of treasure-hunting Subrosians. Both the above and below ground maps have a maze-like feel. I would say, however, that Subrosia is the more segmented map. It opens more as we get more items, and by the time we have Rock's Cape and the magnetic gloves, we can explore most anywhere save the Sword and Shield maze, which requires a portal from the temple remains to reach. On the whole, I would say that I like the world of Holodrum and Subrosia. I feel it's stronger overall compared to Labrynna. I like elements of Labrynna, such as the sea, but Holodrum to me seems more tightly designed. Take the know-it-all bird's house, for instance. I picked a minor nit with Labrynna by pointing out that its tutorial repository is located off the critical path. In Seasons, it is, with its placement west of Horon near the exit to the western shores. By placing it here, players can't miss it. And in an unlinked game, it's emphasized because players will be directed that way to Hero's Cave to get the sword. So again, the world is maze-like, but that's more or less the default in 2D Zelda games. It feels like it unfolds in chunks much like Zelda 2 or perhaps more accurately Link's Awakening. I suspect, however, that it's more flexible in terms of dungeon order than either of those 2 games and its sister game. I managed to wander into Subrosia and get the bomb flower before I was intended to. Had I continued to the Temple of Seasons at that point, I would have gotten the fall season as well. With that, I would have been able to continue on to Unicorn's Cave prior to the Dancing Dragon dungeon. I find Holodrum easier to get around compared to Labrynna, mostly because switching between past and present is essential for navigating some areas of Labrynna. The dual timeline also splits up the fast travel options in that game, with the mystical seed trees used as fast travel points split between past and present. Holodrum overall feels like a smoother player experience in my opinion. I like both worlds, but I would give Holodrum the edge. It manages to feel like a real place with its village and settlements. Horon Village in particular has more of a liveliness to it compared to Lina City. Characters shift locations and have a variety of things they say depending on where you are in the game. I didn't really notice that happening with Lina. Characters will also shift locations in Sunken City, and there are hidden interactions in the game. After defeating Great Moblin, I found him again in Sunken City. He and 2 other Moblins have taken up residence in a house and are rebuilding their stockpile of bombs. I used a bomb to blow up their stockpile and managed to kill myself in the process. After poking around online, I found out that it's possible to blow up their stock of bombs without dying, leading to more interactions. I managed to do this once with Ember Seeds, but I didn't further progress these interactions, but there are more after you initially blow up their house. Being able to experience different seasons across the majority of the surface map is a nice twist. This is a good, solid world that's a step above its sister game in my opinion. In terms of story, Oracle of Seasons is less developed compared to Oracle of Ages. The story is more expansive in a linked game with added scenes featuring Zelda and Twinrova. Without these scenes, Oracle of Seasons is perhaps closer to Link's Awakening or A Link to the Past in terms of story density. I describe Oracle of Ages as feeling a bit like the Nintendo 64 titles in terms of story. The developers behind these games have described having a story-first approach to their development. That makes the less developed story of Oracle of Seasons somewhat surprising. But the development history of the two games may hold some clues as to why Oracle of Ages has the more fleshed out story. In a 2001 interview originally published on Nintendo Online Magazine, director Hidemaru Fujibayashi said that he helped compile a proposal for the game to present to Shigeru Miyamoto. He said, "The core of the game was pretty much decided. That is to say, the fact that it would be on the Game Boy Color and use the 4 seasons, and the decision to retain the feel of the 2D Zelda games." While Fujibayashi said that he started the project as sort of a secretary compiling ideas for the game, he gradually began to take part in the development and ultimately became the director. I suspect that Fujibayashi not clearly heading the team at the start of development may be part of the reason for the lighter story in Oracle of Seasons. In that 2001 interview, Fujibayashi said, "Zelda is a game with a solid world, so I thought we could express characters' existence like in the Nintendo 64 games on the Game Boy too." He admitted to starting development on Oracle of Ages while work on Oracle of Seasons was already underway. He described going over his boss's head to assemble a team that he wanted for Ages. He said, "At first it was just me exchanging ideas with the scenario team. Then as the scenario progressed, I discreetly approached the Capcom artists and programmers I was interested in. This sort of HR thing is normally handled by my direct supervisor, but I thought it best to sound the staff off first. My supervisor scolded me saying, 'That's my job,' but I still got the staff members I wanted to join the team." I think Oracle of Ages has a stronger story than Oracle of Seasons, at least in the unlinked game. I personally would take Seasons over Ages in most other aspects, however. I think Seasons has stronger music, a stronger world, and with one exception, I generally prefer the dungeons of Seasons compared to those in Ages. That one exception is the Sword and Shield Maze, which was my least favorite dungeon between both games. Ages also edges out Seasons in total number of dungeons. The Black Tower serves as an actual dungeon, while Onyx's Castle doesn't quite fit that bill.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Legendary Adventures Podcast. If you've liked it and you haven't already, please consider subscribing. If you've already subscribed, thanks. I really appreciate it. Next week, we're going to be talking about the legacy of both Oracle games. I'm Paul Riley, and I'll see you next week.